Hello. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me today. My name is Jeremy Clarke, and I am the Technology and Learning Platforms Consultant here for Pearson Clinical Assessment Canada. I'm joining you from my home office, like many of you, and I'm trying to find creative ways to achieve work-life balance. Before we jump into the content for today, I'd like to express my deepest thanks and appreciation for those that continue to strive to find ways to help those in need. From our healthcare workers to our grocery clerks and all the professionals in between, it is you who we need to applaud. Thank you for continuing to find ways to help those that need it most. As many of us are adjusting to new ways of working, I hope the following information will provide some guidance on how you may best serve your clients at this time. Today, we will address the various considerations for telepractice using Q Global. Okay, let's dive into our telepractice using Q Global slide deck. Just a few slides just to help provide you some guidance and some considerations when you think about using telepractice through Q Global. Some initial thoughts. If you're not already aware, Pearson has made available over 100 free manuals and stimulus books in our Q Global platform. This is to help you continue to do the great work that you do with your clients every day. I will caution before venturing into telepractice, you'll want to consult with your local professional organizations and provincial guidelines for some guidance. Pearson will continue to evaluate our product offering, and additional materials will be made available, including some helpful practice guides. This webinar will provide a technical overview of how you can use Q Global to administer assessments with a client remotely. Be sure to check out our telepractice page regularly, as we will provide updates on any new materials that are being offered and any new guidelines that we may publish. I'd recommend that you bookmark that page. So let's take a few moments to walk through what we're going to discuss in today's presentation. So we'll cover some telepractice considerations, some factors that we'll want to make sure that we're thinking about when we venture down this road of remote administration. Q Global, to provide a little bit of an overview for those of you that aren't familiar with the platform already, and then a short demonstration highlighting how to assign a remote on-screen administration, as well as how to access our digital resources. Conducting a valid assessment in a telepractice service delivery model requires an understanding of the interplay of a number of complex issues. In addition to the general information on Pearson's telepractice overview page, examiners should address these factors when planning to administer and score assessments via telepractice. We'll dive into each of these today. First, in our audio and visual environment, you want to think about the computers and the connectivity of those devices. So 2 computers with audio and video capability and a stable internet connection is required. You'd also need a web camera, microphone, and speakers and/or headphones that are required for both the examiner and the examinee. You also want to consider what your teleconference platform capability is, making sure that screen sharing is one of those capabilities, and you also want to make sure that they meet the PHIPA or PIPEDA requirements. We want to make sure that if we're going down this road that we're protecting the data, as well as any videos that we may be conducting, any video conferencing that we may be conducting. On that video topic, high quality, HD preferred, is required during the administration. You want to make sure that full faces of the examiner and the examinee are seen using each respective web camera. The teleconference platform should allow all relevant visual stimuli to be fully visible to the examinee when providing instruction or completing items. The video of the examiner should not impede the examinee's view of the visual stimuli. You'll also want to use a full screen mode for screen sharing digital components, making sure that digital stimulus is not in any sort of obstructed view. And you want to limit any on-screen distractions like extra toolbars, notifications, anything of that nature. You'll want to consider the screen size or the image size that is being displayed for your examinee. You should make sure that they are at least 9.7 measured diagonally, like the size of an iPad or an iPad Air. Typically, computer screens used for teleconference assessment are a minimum of 15 inches measured diagonally, but for this purpose, at least 9.7 would still meet standardization. Just be sure that your teleconferencing platform doesn't shrink the image size, because that can sometimes happen. So you want to make sure the facilitator can verify that image size prior to testing any of the examinees. Please avoid any smaller screens like iPad minis or smartphones for examinee-facing content. These have not been examined empirically and may affect stimulus presentation, examinee response, and the validity of the test results. Use your mouse to gesture as needed, gesturing in the stimulus books or response booklets as necessary. And you can also show the paper copy as outlined in our no objection letter of how to show a stimulus book on your camera if needed and as appropriate. Last but certainly not least, about capturing the response booklet performance. So when a response booklet is involved, immediate and accurate scoring can be achieved if the on-site facilitator holds up the response booklet and you capture a screenshot of each used page for each subtest. This will also ensure that no responses are lost or altered prior to scoring. Now the audio requirements. High quality audio capabilities are required during the administration. You want to use over the head or over two-ear stereo headset and the appropriate microphone for both the examiner and the examinee. Again, practice. You want to make sure that you do a audio check as well as a visual check to make sure that everything is working as expected. Testing the audio may include an informal conversation prior to the administration where the examiner is listening for any clicks, pops, or breaks in the audio signal, anything that may distort or interrupt the voice of the examinee or the examiner. The examiner should also ask the examinee and facilitator if there are any interruptions on their end, making sure that there's no distortion or interruptions in the audio signal. As with any testing session, make sure the examinee's environment is free from distractions, including pop-ups or other windows. Ask the examinee and facilitator to close all applications on the computer, laptop, or other device, and to silence alerts and notifications. This will just ensure a smooth and fast performance. Last, but something that's shouldn't be overlooked, is your lighting. Establish good overhead and facial lighting for the examiner and the examinee. You want to make sure that you can see each individual through the teleconference setup. Close blinds or shades to reduce sun glare, and of course on the faces on or the computer screens themselves. Practice. Again, practice is going to be key here. You want to make sure that you have adequate time to practice for your telepractice setup before you're administering with any examinee. Practice the mechanics, the workflow of every item, the entire test. Make sure that the teleconference platform is something you're familiar with and that you can adhere to administration procedures as best that you can. I would recommend using a colleague or a partner, a sibling, or maybe a son or daughter that's at home, and use them as that practice examinee so you can go through a few iterations before you're sitting down with a live client. Follow the administration procedures of a traditional administration as much as possible. For example, if a spoken stimulus cannot be said more than once in a traditional administration, do not say it more than once in a telepractice administration. Again, you want to make sure that your voice is being heard loud and clear prior to going through and starting an official administration. This way you can be confident that they heard your instructions the first time and you won't have to repeat any of those instructions throughout the administration. The on-site's facilitator role in a telepractice session is largely going to be to manage those audiovisual needs and the materials. Train that facilitator to troubleshoot those audiovisual needs. Some things may arise during the testing session, including your camera angle, the lighting, audio checks. Those sorts of things you may want to have to adjust throughout the administrations to be sure that your facilitator is comfortable and able to do so. Inform the facilitator that they must sit unobtrusively and silently out of the examinee's view when they're not actively engaged in his or her role. I think it's important to outline that role for not only the facilitator, but also for the examinee, so they may know when they may step in and assist and when they can't. As with any testing session, again, making sure that all the distractions are free. Be prepared. Make sure the examinee is prepared as well. You want to make sure that the examinee is able, well rested, and ready to appropriately and fully participate in the telepractice test session. Again, make sure that that facilitator understands their role. Certainly, you want to also make sure that you're commenting in your report and state that this test was administered via telepractice, and briefly describe the method of telepractice that was used. We provided a short example there, but this is an area that I would welcome you to reach out to your assessment consultant or to me directly. We can talk through various solutions and scenarios of what might be the best course of action for you and your clients. So just a few notes on Q Global before we get into a live demonstration. For those of you that aren't aware of our Q Global system, it is a web-based reporting system that also allows for the administration of assessments that are self-administered or proctored. Things like the BAS3 and the Vineland 3 are great examples of this. But as I mentioned earlier, we've tried to maximize the availability of our administrations through this remote mode. So check back regularly to our website for recent updates. Q Global will also allow access to digital manuals and stimulus books. Again, as we've mentioned, we've opened up the library to over 100 free assessment tools, which would include those manuals and stimulus books for you. Here's a quick screenshot of where you can access those digital resources, where you'll find instructions, manuals, and stimulus books. There'll be general information about Q Global contained here as well, user guides, video tutorials. Those are all incorporated in this resource library as well. So please be sure to check it out. You can see it at the top of your links, the hyperlinks there in the top towards the right, outlined in the red box for now. This next slide looks at the SelfLife specifically, and I just want to make two clear distinctions here. Within each test folder, you may find a general and or a restricted folder. Please note that anything in the general folder you can print off. It is typically information about the assessments or material that is not protected by copyright that you can store offline or print to have accessible for you. It may include some instructions there as well. Anything in the restricted folder, you'll notice that I've got duplicates here because I've got paid resources that were already loaded into my account, as well as the free trial resources which we've recently uploaded. Please note that these cannot be printed, but they are designed to be stored or shared electronically for the purposes of doing a telepractice assessment. These are PDF documents that would simply open up in a new tab in your web browser, just like this image of the SelfLife book here. There will be directional arrows that will guide you to turning the pages within that stimulus book, and these would be fairly consistent through each of the digital stimulus that we find. Each of them should be contained with a table of contents that will allow you to jump to the appropriate start items or subtests if applicable. So that's a quick overview of our Q Global. Next, we'll queue up a live demonstration and take a look at how to remotely administer assessments, and then as a reminder, how to access those digital materials for some of our administrations. Okay, so let's kick off the demonstration. I've already taken the time to log into my Q Global account. Upon login, you will be presented with what's new in Q Global. This will come up for any new user, as well as any new users that have not logged in for a little while, depending on when the release notes were published. Please take some time to view these. It will share the new enhancements and features of what's been newly released to Q Global. In this particular document, it will highlight the free trial manuals and stimulus books that we've added to the resource library, as well as a new Q Global 2.0 experience for two of our newly released products, the Mackie 2 and the Pettycat. This is an interesting point for many users, as this is a new way for us to take you through the assigning process for a tool. So if you are familiar with Q Global, please have a look at these. Even if you aren't going to be administering these two assessments, it will be helpful to provide any feedback to our team so we can get an understanding of if you like the new presentation mode. Greatly appreciated. Once you've gone ahead and reviewed that, go ahead and click Got It. If you ever want to pull up that information again, if you look in the bottom right corner of your screen, you'll see that there's a release notes link. Just go ahead and click on that, and it'll populate that document one more time for you. For new users, This section in the bottom 2/3 of your screen will house all of your client or examinee information. So if you are new to Q Global, you will likely not have any results here. To go ahead and create your first client, go ahead and select that New Examinee button. Here you will be asked to put in the demographics for the individual. Please note that first and last name are not mandatory, but you will need to have some sort of identification for that individual, but a date of birth would be required. Once you've entered in that information, go ahead and click Save. Let's go ahead and assign a new assessment, and I'll take you through the remote on-screen administration. So for this purpose, I'll go ahead and select my BASC test user, select the checkbox there, and then click Assign New Assessment. Please note that for some of you, you may be brought to your favorites by default. Please be aware that if you do not see any records here, you just need to toggle to the All Assessments tab, and then you can use that search feature. Once you've identified some of the tools that you'll be using frequently, you can simply click that star beside it, and it will automatically add to your favorites. In order to select and assign the assessment, go ahead and select that radio button to the left. You can now click the Assign button, and this will take us to the Assessment Details screen. Here you'll be reminded of the demographics that you entered for your examinee. So if you made any errors, you can certainly go ahead and make the correction here. Please note that if you make the correction here, it will just be reflected for this particular assessment. So if you did make a change that you'd need to alter for all assessments to be assigned, you want to also make that change to the examinee record. Under the Assessment Details section, it'll highlight the assessment that you're looking to assign, what the current status is, which is ready for administration at this stage, and then the administration date. Notice that it populates today's date, which is going to be very appropriate for what we're doing in this demonstration for our remote on-screen administration. The administration date may need to be altered if you're doing a manual entry. Obviously not in this climate if you're doing any paper and pencil administration, but for future use, if you do use the paper and pencil record forms and response booklets, you can certainly come and enter in the scores manually to have Q Global generate the score report for you. You'll also need to identify your examiner, so I'll go ahead and select myself. And then here's where you'll see the delivery mode options. So notice that we have 3 modes for this particular tool: manual entry, again for use with paper forms; on-screen administration, which is typically when you've got the rater or client coming into your office and you can use your machine to complete the administration; or remote on-screen administration, which is what we're going to show you today. In this case, I'm doing the parent rating scale for an adolescent, so I'm going to put in the parent's name. And I'm going to go ahead and use my email address just so that I get a link to the assessment to complete it. Below that is a box for emails for the completion notification to be sent to. So if you are the examiner, go ahead and put in your email address. It should default there. But if you wanted to add a psychometrist or a supervisor or some other team member, you can certainly hit a comma and enter in their email. Once the rating form or the inventory has been completed, both of these email addresses will get notification that they can log into Q Global to see the results. Once you've added the information that you would like, please go ahead and hit preview and send invitation. Just before I click that button, I just want to highlight a couple of things for you. Notice that there's some red text here. The following demographics will be completed during the on-screen administration, so you don't need to edit these in advance. If you were doing a manual entry, you would want to put in the guardian's name and the relationship here as well. But because we're doing it on screen, they will be able to fill out that information themselves. Next, we'll go into the preview and send invitation. Here's where you'll see the assessment invitation email. It will automatically default to our rater invitation email, and you can see the different templates that are available for you. These are all the system generated ones, but please be aware that you can create custom templates, and you can create multiple templates to be accessible for different tools if you wanted to, and you can save them for access at a future date. If you are going to customize the email, please be aware that you should not be changing anything in these parentheses, especially this one here with the rosa_production_URL, because that's what's going to populate the secure link for the rater, in this case, or your client, to complete the form or questionnaire. So again, you can customize everything, but you want to make sure that you maintain anything in parentheses, as these would be tokens that the system will automatically pull from your setup. So example would be examinee first name would be based on the examinee record. So in this case, I was test Basque. So it'll automatically populate those pieces of information. And down below, it'll populate your name, phone, and email based on what's entered in the system. If you want to alter those, that's certainly free for you to do so. But again, just as a reminder, this is the most important section that you'll want to maintain because that's going to generate the secure link for them to complete. So once you've confirmed or altered the form to your liking, go ahead and send invitation. You'll get a notification that the email has been sent. And I'm just going to look over into my email and pick up that on-screen administration request, or remote on-screen administration request, and there it is. Just takes a minute to come through, and now I've just populated on the screen here for you. So you'll see that it automatically pulls the information for Basque test, the parent name that I had entered, and then here is our clickable link. So go ahead and click here. It's going to automatically open up in the web browser. You go ahead and click the next arrow to move through to the assessment screen. It'll first allow or ask for a few demographic pieces of information. That's going to be that information that I showed you earlier. So your rater in this case will go ahead and fill out that information, and then you can click into the next page. Now they'll be provided with some brief instructions on how to complete this particular assessment. When they're on to the first live items, in most cases, each of our remote on-screen administrations will present 10 questions at a time. They'll be identified with these radio buttons so that they can select their response and simply scroll down to the next item. I'm going to purposefully leave the last item unanswered so that I can show you what happens. So the system will remind them that they must complete all items. And if you don't know or unsure of the response to an item, just give your best estimate. So the system will remind users to complete that. One other thing that I want to make mention of is certainly during this time, we may have some distractions at home, and you may get pulled away from completing a questionnaire, or your examinee or your rater may get pulled away. If they have to close this browser, not to worry. If we go back to our home, go back to the email link that was sent to the rater, they just simply hit that link again and it'll bring them right to where they left off. So not to worry, nothing's been lost. They can pick up and resume their responding. So that's as easy as it is to assign a remote on-screen administration. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my home screen. And now I want to highlight where to find the resource library and the tools that we have recently released. So up in the top, you'll see there's a series of links. What we're going to focus on now is that resource library. As we open it up, I want to first bring your attention to the About Q Global folder. If you click on the little plus sign, it'll expand to show you the folders contained within. And you'll see that there's a number of different folders here that look at forms and templates, training resources, user guides, security and legal information, all kinds of great tools and helpful documents contained here. On our user guides, if you're a first-time user, I'd certainly recommend checking that out. We've got it available in French, Spanish, and English, so you can have a view of those as well. You can look at the training resources, and there's a tutorial collection, which can be very helpful for new users as well. So you'll see that there is short little videos or hyperlinks that will take you to a little walkthrough for each of the different tutorial videos that you may want to look for more information on. Each one of them is about 5 minutes. So you can certainly go at them at your own pace and just tap into the specific information that you're looking to learn more about. You'll notice that there is one called Administering an Assessment via a Remote On-Screen Administration. So if you've checked out this video now, but you need a reminder later, you can always see the tutorial collection for that. If that isn't sufficient for you, by all means, feel free to reach out to your local assessment consultant, or you can always reach out to me, Jeremy Clarke, the Technology and Learning Platforms Consultant for Pearson Clinical Canada. So let's take a look at the BASC 3, just because we were in that particular tool, assigning a remote on-screen administration. I want to highlight two areas for you at this time. We have a general folder, which would contain documents that you can print off, you can store locally, most often contain some basic instructions or a general overview of the assessment, and there may be some unique features depending on the assessment tool that you're in. And then in the restricted folder, that's where you'll house some of the more specific information for that assessment, like manuals, stimulus books, those sorts of things. So just keep in mind that anything in the restricted folder, you won't be able to print or download, but you can certainly view online, and you could screen share those tools as well. So for the purpose of looking at a stimulus book, I'm going to jump into our SelfLife. Notice that it also has a general folder as well as a restricted folder. For some folks, you may see that you've got a stimulus book that doesn't have the free trial in ahead of it. That's because these are also paid resources or paid documents that you can have access to digitally at any point in time. Now, during the time of the COVID pandemic, we have opened up over 100 plus manuals and stimulus books for our users to have access at no charge, as everybody is trying to do what we can remotely. So for this demonstration, I'll go ahead and click on the digital stimulus book for the SelfLife. Take just a minute to open up. And this should be presented exactly like your paper and pencil copy. The difference here is obviously going to be you'll have a clickable hyperlink for the table of contents to jump into the specific subtests, and you'll have little toggle arrows to move forward and backward through the book. So here's our first arrow to open the cover, and then they move down to the bottom corner. So here's a table of contents that is all hyperlinked. So if we wanted to look at word structure, for example, we can jump into that particular subtest. Notice that it does highlight the age for the demos and trials. And we simply move through using the arrows, and you'll go through a series of demo items and then a couple of trials until you're into the live items, and then you can keep going. We'll go back to the home, brings you back to that table of contents, so you can now switch into a different subtest if you need to, and let's have a look at formulated sentences for this one. So I just want to show a couple of things to you here quickly. When you click on these links, you'll get a demo item, a trial, and then after they've completed that second trial, you'll see that there is a few different starting points here, which are based on the age-appropriate starting point for this particular assessment. So in this case, I believe my kiddo was 14, so I'm going to start at ages 12 to 14, which is item 10. It'll automatically jump you to that item, and then you can pick up your administration from the subsequent starting point. Move through the items, and then once you've triggered that discontinue rule, you can always go back to the home and then pick up with the next subtest that you're ready to move forward with. I hope that's been helpful, taking a quick look at the digital stimulus book for the SelfLife. I'm just going to go back to our main Q Global page. At this point, I just want to remind you that you can certainly reach out to your assessment consultant for a little bit more direction or clarity for Q Global entry. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm here for your support as well. Thanks for checking out the demo. I hope that live demonstration was helpful for you. If you do have any additional questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to your Pearson rep. I've listed them here for you. So in Alberta and British Columbia, we have Samuel Rousseau. For Manitoba and Ontario, we have Michael Charon. For Quebec, we have Pierre Chalquette. And for Atlantic Canada, including Saskatchewan, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, please reach out to Nadira Chan. If you have any additional questions for me, certainly feel free to reach out to me as well. jeremy.clarke@pearson.com. And again, I'm the Technology and Learning Platforms Consultant here for Canada. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. I hope that you found this information to be helpful. I wish you all the best. Please stay safe out there. And again, please be sure to check back regularly, as we will be continuously updating our Telepractice page. Thanks very much, and have a great day, everybody.